Welcome to the Voyage Clinics podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John Sanders, and we're here to just talk about cool stuff. As a family doc, we deal with lots and lots of things, and so it is right next to Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, all the things. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about this season of the year. It's cold and flu season, so haven't given an update on cold and flus in a while, and so I just want to take some time with that. We'll also go into common. It seems like a very simple thing, but it can actually be quite complicated. And we'll talk about influenza. We'll talk about the common cold. We'll also talk about really common treatment modalities. Again, this is not medical advice. This is just me rambling about things that will be helpful for folks in the community. But also talk to your doctor. You know, there are nuances to healthcare, and I think it's worth it to talk to your doc and understand the nuances of your own personal health with regard to some medicines or different things that you can or cannot take or should not take. So hope that helps you. Let's talk a little bit. So I'm Dr. John. I'm from Nevada, a little mining town, and I went to UNLV for undergrad and sports science, like sports medicine and stuff, working with all the athletes, super fun, and then decided to go to medical school. Went to medical school in South Florida, Nova Southeastern College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's a great school, more than 50 years old and very well established. It's actually a Jewish school, really cool. And from there, I went on to do a family medicine residency for 3 additional years in Jacksonville, Florida at St. Vincent's Hospital, family medicine residency program, really wonderful. And my emphasis during that was in rural medicine. So longer hours, lots of good time training, and really my love is of small towns. I love taking care of small towns and good people, and it was super fun. We from there went to Moab, where I was a country doc, working in the ER hospital, ran a busy clinic, did OB, C-sections, lots of dermatology, sideline doc on the football games at night. So really, really satisfying, fun care. And then we moved here to kind of Utah County about 8 years ago, and here we are. And so that's kind of my bio background thing. I'm passionate about healthcare and taking good care of families and individuals. And today we just wanted to talk about a really straightforward topic. We're right in the middle of winter, and so cold and flu season has been the never-ending cold and flu season, probably for about 18 to 24 months actually. Since COVID, we did a lot of things that maybe proliferated the cold and flu season. Every cold and flu season, our society, our populations, they have multiple viruses, multiple, probably hundreds of viruses that fly around the community, pass from child to adult to adult to adult to child to all throughout in all these families, and they just get passed. When a virus is passed, it has to vector. So it has to create a vector, means that if I cough, those little droplets go from my mouth into the air, and then they're transmitted to you. And some viruses are transmitted via droplets, right? Some viruses are only passed through blood or secretions. And then each virus has critical mass necessary for it to spread. So some viruses are very, very, very contagious. Even contact can spread them to another person. Little minor, like this much virus creates spread. Some viruses require much more virus to create spread. So those are all the factors that go into the spreading of viruses. Adenovirus, for instance, people commonly call this pink eye. It commonly creates kind of a pinky eye, goopy, and it's a virus. Also can create like upper respiratory tract infection symptoms, which include runny nose, sore throat, cough, all those things. But then they get the goopy eye thing. Super contagious, like all the droplets, all the secretions, all the things. It's like it flies around families and gets into everybody. And we've got a fair amount of that cooking in our community. Strep is generally strep throat, or not a virus, but strep throat is generally passed through. Like I drink something, spread it to you. You may have heard of mono, the kissing disease, also secretions, not necessarily droplet. COVID was a droplet guy. So you cough or sneeze and it passes to someone else. With just that science, right? So this is something that all doctors train in, and anybody that's taken microbiology, they train in. A virus requires a vector in order to transmit. And so just a point of clarification. So if you don't vectorize a virus, can you spread it? Even though you're infected, I'm infected. I have a virus, but I never cough in someone's face. Well, yeah, then that's not vectorizing and not spreading. What if you technically are pre-symptomatic or you don't have symptoms? Can you spread it then? This was the big thing with COVID, right? And everybody was masking even though they had no symptoms and stuff. And I just think, gosh dang it, like the basics of virology, the basics of any of that just says that is rubbish. Like if you're not sick, you're not going to spread. If you're not coughing, spewing, you're not pushing it out into the air. Well, what about talking? There's droplets in talking, right? These were all the political minutia hairs that they were splitting during the COVID season that led to, frankly, a massive, massive, massive thing that hurt a lot of our people, especially our teenagers. When you're just like trying to talk to people in a masked manner, it kills a lot of the social connection, a lot of those things. And then we were scared of each other and all these things, even though nobody was symptomatic. And that just hurt our society massively. So if we could just roll that back and redo time and not do that, that'd be sweet. But going forward, if you're not vectorizing, you're not coughing, spewing, you should be totally fine. What if I have a virus that causes nausea, vomit, diarrhea? How does that spread? Touch. So you you go to the bathroom, you don't wash your hands well enough, then you like reach into a chip bag and you eat a chip, and then someone else reaches in that chip bag and eats that chip. So it's kind of gross, but that's generally how all of those bacteria or viruses are spread. They call it oral fecal spread, which is awesome because then you think of eating someone else's poo. But you have to vectorize anything, virus, bacteria, in order to spread it. And so that's important. To prevent the spread of things, keeping your immune system optimal is really healthy and happy and really good. So stress levels, if you're hyper stressed, your immune system is compromised. Many people, when their immune system is compromised, they get a cold. They even start having a cold sore. Now you got 2 viruses, awesome. And so it is taking advantage of your immune system that's keeping all these things at bay kind of all the time. If you're happy, healthy, non-stressed, eating right, exercising, boy, you're going to have a pretty reasonable cold and flu season without probably much sickness at all. Even if you do get sick, if you're optimally taking care of your body, then you might get sick for a day or 2 or 3, as opposed to the 5 to 7 to 10 days that some viruses can cause illness. So prevention is worth a pound of cure. Ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. My mom always said. So do all those things, eat right, exercise. Exercise mobilizes your lymphatics. What is your lymphatics? Your lymphatics is like basically how we fight infection. It's these little vessels throughout your body that white blood cells travel in, and antibodies and all these things. And so when you're moving, you mobilize your lymphatics, and it mobilizes your immune system, keeps all these things at bay. So those are the things that we can do to prevent it. Those are the ways that these viruses and things are spread. Now let's get into some of the details about some of these viruses. So I want to talk firstly just broadly about a pretty broad category of viruses called upper respiratory tract infections, URIs. Upper respiratory tract is like from the nose, the mouth, the throat, maybe some of the upper lungs, but that's it. It doesn't go deep into your chest. And although you are coughing, people think that, I've got a pneumonia, but just upper respiratory is like the postnasal drip, the mucus, everything is causing this upper respiratory infection. Super common. And there's about a zillion viruses that cause that. And you don't have to viral culture all of them because almost none of them are really worrisome. Generally, when you get sick with one of these things, you have pretty solid immunity for at least 4 months with antibodies and all that. But then you also have cellular immunity. So there's 2 types of immunity. You've got antibody immunity, which is creating active antibodies in your bloodstream. And then if you get that virus again during that cold and flu season, you don't get sick. But you still develop cellular immunity to that virus. Even though if your antibodies wane, you still have cells that are ready to roll. So if your body sees that virus again, it really quickly ramps up its production of the antibody that will kill it. So both of those types of immunity are important. If you have antibody immunity, you might not even get sick again. If you just have cellular immunity, you might just get a mild cold. And so that's why you have some variability to what kinds of colds that we get. Largely, adults are immunologically mature. We've seen a lot of things, and children are more immunologically naive. they haven't seen a lot of things. They haven't seen a lot of these viruses. And so their propensity to get a cold or virus and get sick, really sick, body aches, chills, fevers are pretty high, even from a common cold virus. But adults generally don't get that sick because we have that cellular immunity, that memory of our immune system, and it takes care of it. Just yesterday, I had a mama call me. Hey, I got this kid. He's really sick. And I'm like, what's going on? Oh, well, she's got a cold, a runny nose, fever, chills. Her ear's really full, and she's just really tired. She's sleeping all the time, and she's just like she gets up and she acts normal, and then she doesn't want to eat anything, and she's kind of really sick. And so we talked about symptoms, and she was having upper respiratory tract infection symptoms, and then also some nausea, and she threw up every once in a while. So the viruses can hit the nasal mucosa, which is the mucous membranes of your nose, and then they proliferate. And then your body's like, well, we need to create a whole bunch of mast cells that explode and create histamine, and then create a whole bunch of mucus. And then that mucus is just your normal immune response to it. Coughing, sneezing is also part of it. And the virus is smart because it made you cough and sneeze and vectorize that to your neighbor, right? So it's doing its thing. Well, this gal was doing all those things. And mom was like, well, when I get sick, I don't get this sick. And I said, well, that's because you're older than she is and you're more mature than she is. Her immune system is much more naive. So she's going to get more severe symptoms for a little bit longer duration. And that's just because she hasn't seen this virus before. So that's pretty much the gist on immunity and the way that works. And different viruses cause immunity for a different duration. So influenza actually causes a long-term immunity, like a year. Many of those common cold viruses, arbovirus, parvovirus, adenovirus, there's a gazillion of them. They cause immunity just for a shorter period of time, and that's okay. They're not a big deal. I want to talk about virulence and contagiousness. So how virulent it is means that it's like creates really bad symptoms, and then how contagious it is means it spreads really quickly. And if you think of virus, a virus doesn't want to kill the host. It just wants to spread quickly and cause, some symptoms to vectorize it to the next person, right? Create a vector, coughing, sneezing, whatever that looks like. So generally that's the ideal virus is one that's really contagious, that's mildly virulent. COVID went through its phases, right? So initially it was quite serious and, lots of morbidity, mortality. So injuries and death that created from some of that. But then as it went along and it evolved and mutated, it became less virulent and more contagious, which is what we wanted, because we want to spread that throughout the community in a non-virulent way, which means not causing complications or death, and which is great. And so that's really the ideal virus, is one that is really quite contagious, spreads really quickly, and then kind of fizzles out and never doesn't harm anybody. Depending on how contagious and virulent, mostly virulent something is, how profound a injury that virus might cause to one's body, will depend on how we react to it, right? So let's talk about influenza. Influenza is a small war every year, and it kills. I haven't looked at the data, but when I trained, it was in the 30,000. So 30 to 36,000 people a year, influenza kills. Usually it's in the higher risk category. So like elderly people or like super, like young newborn children, people whose immune systems are somewhat compromised. So strapping healthy young adults and people that are not elderly generally don't have complications from influenza, and that can just run its course. People in the other camps generally have more profound symptoms and even death. And so it is real. And every year, if you look at the CDC, the reports of morbidity and mortality for influenza, you can just look it up and see exactly how many people died from influenza this year. It's a big deal. Healthcare workers like myself, we just vaccinate for it, and they take the most common strains from last year, and they guess that these will probably be close to the strains that will spread throughout the world next year. And so they vaccinate the whole United States. Every once in a while, they get it wrong. And so some people say, I had the flu shot and it didn't work. Well, that year maybe they guessed wrong. So they maybe guessed that this strain would be the more predominant strains of the influenza, and it turned out to be, it maybe mutated a little bit more than suspected. And so it was easily spread. I've been talking now for quite a little while, and we're really scratching the surface of how complex some of this stuff is. And I just wanted folks to know, like, these are complex situations. These are complex things to understand. And so hopefully your learning and understanding is broadening on these topics. But I digress. So let's talk more about influenza. We vaccinate the at-risk populations for it. And it makes sense, right? That's how we work. These people have complications and even death from influenza. Let's protect them. And then we vaccinate potential people that might spread it, like me. Because I see a lot of sick people, and I want to keep everybody safe. So I just vaccinate for influenza, not a big deal. So that's pretty straightforward. I want to talk about other vaccinations. So we just recently developed RSV vax, not we, but like people did in the United States, which is pretty neat. You can vaccinate moms for that. RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. It is very harmful to young children, less than 6 months of age, especially really less than 9 months of age. And they're more of an at-risk population. See the podcast that Jonathan Bartholomew and I did on this one. He's a pediatrician friend of mine, and we nerded out about this at length. So I'll let you kind of see that podcast episode about RSV if you have a younger child and want to kind of learn more about that. But my point is that there are vaccinations out there that are pretty neat. The COVID vaccination, I think it's interesting. So SARS-CoV-2, SARS virus has been around for a long time and have mutated and done some things. I mean, if you guys remember, like SARS back in the day, I think it was just called the SARS virus. That was a scary one, and then it kind of fizzled out, and then nobody heard anything more about it. And then it was not scary. It turned out it wasn't as scary as people thought. Well, then when COVID hit, kind of did something similar with the mutations and things. And I want to talk a little bit about herd immunity. So any virus, right, flies around the world. We are definitely an international community. Doesn't matter where you live, because people fly in and out of different communities all the time from all over. Except for where I live, where I grew up in Round Mountain, Nevada, it was not an international community. Like very, very rarely did people go. We were 5 hours from Vegas, 5 hours from Reno. So we were small town, very, very far from any international community. But most of the time, your folks are in international communities. And that means that these viruses fly all over the world really, really quickly. And so what that creates is herd immunity. So everybody in the entire population get the virus, and it flows through everybody, and it's fine, and everybody does fine, and that's herd immunity. It is one way to get a group of people immune to a certain virus. And so, I mean, it's been a minute since I visited the data on COVID, but last time I visited it, which was maybe over a year ago, we had accomplished herd immunity. So over 95% of our populations have contracted COVID, and therefore we have reached herd immunity. What that means is it calls to question the need for further vaccination, because herd immunity means that everybody's immune to it, right? So then we should consider pumping the brakes on that, which is exactly what Marty Makary did when he looked at the COVID vaccine and said, hey, yes, you fancy people are out there creating vaccinations against the newest strain of the COVID vaccine. We just talked about virulence and contagibility of viruses. And the mutation now from the original mutation has well over 250 new mutations that have decreased the virulence, which is remember, virulence causes death or really badness, like really profound disease, and increase the contagibility. So now it spreads quickly, and it's not as big a deal as it used to be. Well over 250. Like that was a long time ago. When I looked at it, it was like continued to decline in its virulence. So that's also reassuring. However, science, these guys that, they make the vaccine and they're like, let's just keep on creating it and pushing it out there. They're creating it against the most recent strain. And that makes sense for flu. That makes sense for these other guys, but it might not make sense for COVID because we have herd immunity, and which is both cellular and antibody, remember, and its virulence and contagibility continue to augment to the better. So again, I think it's smart of Marty Makary to say, hey, we need to look at this. Is this current vaccine really helping people? Is it saving lives to a degree that is, gosh, I want to watch my words here because I gotta be really careful. Are we helping people, saving lives? That's basically the gist of it. And so that's the whole FDA. Their job is safety of Americans. So we're looking at that. And I think it's brilliant, especially for age groups that are maybe not at risk for COVID, right? So there are some age groups that have like essentially zero risk from contracting COVID. So just like influenza, we don't vaccinate healthy, strong 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds. We don't vaccinate those people. 50-year-olds, we also don't vaccinate those people because they're at a non-risk group. COVID also has those. And yet the vaccine is approved for those groups, but should we be vaccinating those groups of people? Well, I think the risk to benefit ratio, you should discuss that with your doctor and talk about it. Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. And so I just think it's significant to talk about vaccines, how they work, why they work, and when they work. And then when do we decide to use them or not, right? For those common cold type situations. Obviously, the whole vaccine discussion is a whole nother thing, which is also being questioned by the FDA, which is awesome. So I think we can talk more about vaccines at another podcast, but I'm really going to stick to cold flu, kind of the common cold, because we're in that vein. So what do we do when we get sick? Okay. One more thing. When you get little kid coughs in your face, do you get sick the next day? What about 2 days? What about 3? Generally, virus spread, vectorized from somebody to you, whether I took my hand in that dirty bag of Doritos, it's gross, or somebody coughed in my face, or I shared a drink with somebody, or I smooched somebody like my wife with, kissing disease or something, mononucleosis, another sweet virus in cytomegalovirus. Cool. How long before I start showing symptoms after I, got exposed? Well, generally viruses have an incubation period, and it varies from virus to virus by a few days, but it's generally going to be 5 to 14 days. And so you may start having symptoms 5 or 6 days later. If it's the next day, then it's probably something, unless it's a GI, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, which can be like within hours of eating one, especially bacterial causes of those. But general cold viruses, upper respiratory tract infections are generally 5 to 14 day incubation period before you start getting symptoms. When you start having symptoms, your body's trying to mount an immune response to this virus, and it's behind the 8 ball because the virus has been hiding in your cells for a little bit, incubating. And then all those cells explode and release a bunch of virus. And then your body's like, whoa, what's going on? So then you start creating some immune response, runny nose, fever, sore throat, cough, mucus in my ears. So I want to talk about just URIs. This is a category of viruses that cause runny nose, cough, sore throat, mucus in your ears, mucus in your sinuses, congestion, all that stuff. Generally, that's going to be worse for 3 to 4 days, and then better for 3 to 4 days, and then by 5 to 7 days, pretty much cleared up in you. Sometimes they have fever, often they don't. If you have fever and those symptoms, there's a possibility that it could be influenza. And if you're in a low risk group, then no big deal. You just fight it just like any other virus. If you're in a higher risk group, maybe talk to your doc quickly. I have fever, chills, body aches, runny nose, sore throat, cough, congestion. Maybe talk to your doc quickly if you're 65 and older, or you're a young child, a young child. Those are more at-risk categories for influenza, and might be warranted to treat that with one of the newer influenza antiviral medicines for that. So that's really helpful. But you got to get treatment quickly if it is influenza within 24 to 48 hours for it to really do much. Once it's past that, it's not really going to help you that much unless you have profound symptoms. Again, talk to your doctor, help them. They'll help you kind of navigate some of these nuanced spaces of influenza. So back to the common cold, which is like baby influenza. You got symptoms, but they're not super profound symptoms. Treatment is really around symptom relief because the symptoms are so miserable. tons of mucus everywhere, right? Well, how do we help with that? We give you a mucolytic, something that breaks up the mucus and makes it so it's not so thick and sticky. It doesn't pull in your sinuses, doesn't pull in your ears, in your throat and lungs, and it just moves. Your body can move it quickly. Coughing moves it, sneezing, it moves the mucus. Mucolytics, there's a couple of them that are pretty good. One is N-acetylcysteine, NAC. People use NAC. It's kind of a thing out there. I love NAC. I think you could take it even preventatively. Does a lot of really neat things for your body. But it's also a mucolytic, and they use it all over the place. We don't tremendously use it in the United States as a mucolytic, but it is a mucolytic, and it's safe, and it has other health benefits. So convert to NAC from Mucinex. Everybody uses Mucinex in America. It's guaifenesin. All it is a mucolytic as well, but it also causes a bunch of other things and side effects and all that. And it doesn't have the upside that NAC does. You can still use it. I like extended release Mucinex or guaifenesin. Here's the pickle with cold medicines, right? Everybody takes cold medicine. I took my cold syrup. Man, they're always laced with some extra stuff. They've got diphenhydramine in them. Man, why am I taking Benadryl when I got a cold? That's dumb. And is not needed. And this Tylenol PM thing, it just has diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, and makes you sleepy. That's about it. Gives you a dry mouth. That's about it. Not needed. So I don't like all those cold syrups and combo cold medicines. They put dextromethorphan in there, makes you groggy, also makes you cough a bunch. Not needed. So guaifenesin or N-acetylcysteine as mucolytics help so your body can clear the mucus so it doesn't pull. If it pulls in your ears, it'll cause an opportunistic infection like an otitis externa or otitis media rather. Acute otitis media is like an ear infection. Kids get those more commonly than adults because they have a more open ear passage. So the nasal passage and the ear communicate easier. Adults have a little bit sharper angle, but every adult has had that cold where they feel like they're blunted in their hearing. It's just mucus in there. Not a big deal. Take a mucolytic, help break it up, and so it doesn't pull. If it pulls for too long, it can create what's called an opportunistic infection. That is a petri dish that grew some bacteria, and so watch for that. It generally is bacterial if it's after day 10. So I got a cold, I got better, and now my ear hurts, and it's been 10 or 11 days. You probably have a bacterial ear infection, or your kid, right? I have a cold, upper respiratory tract infection. My ear hurts like crazy. It's been 3 days since I got the virus. What's going on? It's a virus. It's not bacterial, most likely. Still talk to your doctor about it, but man, we used to overtreat these. We'd give everybody antibiotics at day 3. It's a cold. It's a common cold. Most ear pressure situations within 3 days of a viral illness symptoms are just viral. Not a big deal. It does hurt. Take a mucolytic. It'll help drain that ear impaction of mucus and feel better, and it'll be sweet. So mucolysis are really important. The other thing you do is something to dry up the mucus. So generally we use pseudoephedrine or derivatives of that. These are behind the counter in the United States. You have to ask the pharmacist for them. Extended release, 60 to 120 milligrams twice a day. That's wonderful. Sorry, don't mean to give you dosing. That's you want to be careful with hypertension. So talk to your doctor if pseudoephedrine is safe for you. But it dries up the mucus really nice. And literally with those two medicines, I can have a cold and I don't even know it. And I'm not vectorizing it as much either because I'm not coughing, I'm not sneezing. All the mucus has been taken care of. So my symptoms are managed. I'm feeling great. And so awesome. So those are really primarily the two symptom relief one. I like Cepacol lozenges. They have some lidocaine in them, and you can suck on those if you got a really bad sore throat. Sore throat with the virus, it can be like a pharyngitis or laryngitis where it's affecting that space, but often the sore throat is just it's affecting the nasal mucosa. So if a virus sets into your nasal mucosa, it's just here, tons of mucus. If it sets into your throat, then it's just your throat. You don't have tons of mucus. And again, your doc can help you manage the nuance of that. You got to kind of do a physical exam and stuff, but that's really helpful. So if the sore throat is just from the mucus, then it helps with the mucolysis and then the other medicine to dry it up too. So yeah, those are really easy ways to kind of manage that. prevention, I think you could look at like cold and flu season, taking an increase in your zinc, because there's some evidence that shows that, higher zinc levels help prevent colds and even fight them. So folks that, I manage, I always tell them, take 50 milligrams of zinc during the winter months. And if you get a cold, that's fine too. There's some remedies out there that are kind of natural, and those are fine too, generally speaking. Vitamin C, I've looked at the data on that. It's pretty poor. So I don't know. Everybody's been taking vitamin C, including me, since I was a little kid. My mom was like, take this because you're sick. I don't know that it really helps, but your body fights the infection in 5 to 7 days anyway. So manage those symptoms. That's great. The other one that actually does create an increased immune response was elderberry. So elderberry tincture, folks take elderberry, extractions and whatnots. And it does actually, it just presses your immune system to create a bigger immune response, which is pretty cool. So some folks will take elderberry stuff during cold and flu season. I was one of them growing up. My mom was middle of nowhere. She's like a hobby herbalist. We did all that. And it's neat to see the evidence behind some of those things. If you're curious about the evidence of any, echinacea or, any of these other type things, echinacea is pretty cool. It actually works. You can look at examine.com. It's pretty neat. They've compiled really the data or evidence behind all supplements. Maybe not all, but many, many, many supplements. And it's enlightening. I think it's neat. And I love the art of healing. And it's true that when you take something you believe will help you, that does actually help you 30% of the time, even if it's not scientifically, even if it will not help you scientifically. like there is a belief and emotional process to healing and wellness that's beautiful. So I don't ever tell people, hey, don't take that thing, because if you take it and you believe it'll help you, that will help you 30% of the time at least. And so that's neat. However, I'm a scientist too, and I like science. And so science says more than 30% of the time this actually works. So that says is it negates placebo. It's better than placebo. It doesn't negate it. And so that's pretty cool. Examine.com is a website you can go to look at that. And now, man, doctors have a really cool AI tool that came out less than a year ago called Open Evidence AI, where they can look at the data on really anywhere, any journal, anything in the snap of a finger, and it's free for them. So if your doc doesn't know about that, openevidence.com, you can just type in whatever you're looking at, natural remedies for cold and flu season, and boom, it'll populate a whole bunch of things and the research and the articles and the data on them. This was sponsored by several medical schools and some really generous people, and they paid to pierce the paywalls. That was good alliteration. My wife would be proud. So paywalls are up from JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of American Medical. I don't forget what JAMA stands for, but all these journals, they do research and they're funded, and so we gotta pay to gain access to their research. And so not everybody has the time to, or to pay for all that, but then the time to kind of cull through it all. So it's nice to have an AI tool that will do it for me. And so, yeah, that's really neat. You should tell your docs about that. Influenza, we talked about cold management of the common cold virus. And again, 5 to 7 days, pretty much done. Influenza is just like the common upper respiratory tract infection virus, just worse. It's just like 30 to 40% worse. Fevers, chills, body aches, runny nose, cough, sore throat. I'm in bed, I'm exhausted. And influenza is a big deal. Again, if you're in the low risk category, you can just weather the storm, talk to your doc about it, but weather the storm. If you're pregnant, if you're a young child or an older people, then you might want to consider talking to your doc early in the ballgame within 24 hours and get on one of those anti-flu medicines. That's about it. Otherwise, symptom management, exactly like the common cold, is very, very reasonable. You might add, an anti-inflammatory, Tylenol, things like that for body aches and things like that. Those are the main viruses that are upper respiratory. Again, influenza, opportunistic infections, pneumonias are pretty common with that. And so 8, 9, 10 days in, and I've got a worsening cough. My sputum has changed. maybe look at talking to your doc about the possibility of an opportunistic pneumonia or something like that. Viruses also affect the GI tract, so the alimentary canal from mouth to anus, and you can get nausea, vomiting, followed by diarrhea. And that can, same thing, kind of run its course, pun intended. And so you get the runs, you get all those things, and it does kind of work its way through your system. Generally, for GI things, most docs, we just kind of watch and support them with fluids. Make sure that you're getting enough fluids, sipping on things. We generally, like if somebody's vomiting a lot, we've got medicines for that, but then also a kind of a graduated return to hydration. So we'll just hydrate them orally with like a little tiny sip, like a teaspoon every 10 minutes, followed by a tablespoon every 10 minutes. And then, a quarter of a cup every 10, half a cup every 10. And then from, there, you could probably just drink as much as you want. And hydration with water, electrolyte fluids. In children, sometimes electrolytes are kind of tougher for them. Pedialyte tastes like garbage, like it's gross, unless you get the flavored, yummy kind. So, even the American Association of Pediatrics recommends like apple juice for kids. Like that's totally reasonable. They'll sip on it, maybe dilute it by half, and then, give them some water and apple juice. And so that's the GI tract thing. If you're dry, not like your kiddos aren't, creating wet diapers, it's been a while, talk to your doctor. Maybe might be time for them to get some IV fluids, those kinds of things. There's rotavirus vaccine for kids, because rotavirus specifically can cause hospitalization in smaller kids. I've had some of those little kiddos pooping like 27 times a day and super dehydrated. There's just nothing you could do to keep them hydrated other than just put them in the hospital, give them fluids and stuff. So that's why that one actually works pretty well. Recommended for that age group. So yeah, those are the main kickers I wanted to kind of kick around with you guys today and talk about during this cold and flu season. Stay healthy, get exercise, manage your stress. I think we work really hard in America, and sometimes we're not good at relaxing and resting and taking a holiday, which, in England, they're really good at holiday. Like they're good at that. They take weeks off every year, and they're really good at like emotional resetting and like all that things. But in America, we grind really hard, and expectations are higher and higher, and we're not very good at de-stressing and relaxing. And so take some time for that and exercise and play some music and sing a lot and, do the Serenity Wood thing like I do. That's really satisfying. If you don't know what that is, just watch any of my other stuff. And yeah, I think just, manage those things and stay healthy, and hope this cold and flu season treats you well. And thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned some cool stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And Dr. John signing off.